With me in the studio is KC Singh, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Delighted to see once again General Ashok Mehta in our studio after a long time. Good evening, sir. And Maruf Raza, thank you very much. Good to see you face to face once in a while, Maruf. And with us also is General Mrinal Suman. He's a defense procurement expert. And we have General Shankar Prasad and Alka Acharya. She's a former member of the National Security Advisory Board. Thank you very much. Alka Acharya, if I could begin by asking you, we spoke day before. Okay, she'll be joining us in some time. Just let me begin by asking General Shankar Prasad. You've seen the story develop over the last 3 or 4 days, General Shankar Prasad. Now it's clear to me, General Shankar Prasad, that the Chinese are basically telling us this is our territory and now we're not moving on. I just lost the signal with General Shankar Prasad, so that question goes to General Mrinal Suman. General Mrinal Suman, the Chinese have told us very clearly we are going to be here, we are not moving back anywhere. How should we respond now that this whole issue has dragged on this entire week?
First of all, let me tell you, having served in that area and having reasonable ground knowledge, the Chinese claim that there is a difference in perception about the line of actual control is wrong, totally wrong. That difference can be for 1 or 2 kilometers, but in this particular area, more than 10 kilometers, nobody can be mistaken. And it can't be taking them more than 20 years to realize that their area extends up to this place. It is a deliberate mischief intended to test the spine of Indian leadership and has been very well timed. Now, as regards the second part of your question about India's response, well, mature nations do not respond in an impulsive manner. We must try all our options that are available to us. To start with, we have a mechanism available on the ground level where the local military commanders try their best to resolve issues. Let's give that particular mechanism a chance to prove itself. Thereafter, we have got the trade, the diplomatic and all other options. The ground action, as very many people are clamoring for, is always the last option. Let me finally say that our response has to be very firm, unambiguous, yet it has to be calibrated and very well thought through. After analyzing our strengths and weaknesses.
Which it is not as of now, because we are determined to call it an isolated incident. When the starting premise is, KC Singh, that you have the foreign minister, instead of ramping up the pressure on the flight, almost sounding apologetic, saying, oh, we must be sure it is and must be an isolated incident. He's essentially already giving the Chinese an upper hand.
That's absolutely right, but we must realize that this is not a one-off with India. All along their periphery at the moment. In fact, the Chinese ambassador in Japan only 2 days back was summoned, as was the Chinese ambassador in Delhi. Because the Chinese have set forth 7 ships to go to the disputed Senkaku Islands to contest the Japanese sovereignty of those islands. They've cordoned off the Scarborough Shoal, which is next to the Philippines, where...
Sure. And how are the Japanese responding?
Well, the Japanese said, we will hang on. And they have said that, in fact...
How would you compare the Japanese response to the Indian response?
Because the leadership has, in fact, revisited the Yasukuni Shrine, which they had not been visiting for a long time. And their Prime Minister has gone to the extent of saying that we did not invade Asia. So actually, the Chinese have ended up radicalizing the opinion in Japan. Okay. Whereas here what is happening is, anybody who says that a response should be a little more muscular is called a hawk.
Yeah.
As if, they've lost their mind. I think what should have been done by the government of India was to send the minister to Japan, send the minister to Philippines, to Vietnam, to all these countries. Send the signal to China that you will not divide us. If you do not deal with your periphery on certain principles of international comity and decency, then you will end up combining
Alka Acharya, who's with us in the studio, I had the pleasure of speaking to her day before yesterday. She's giving you a cold stare as you just said that, by the way. Alka Acharya asked her this question and she said that, don't hype this up, essentially. Look at this in the context of 30 years of work that we have done together, a very strong partnership that has been built. Do you think, Maruf, responding to that assessment, that what is going on over the last 4 days in the media is hype?
Well, if the media doesn't bring it up, Arnab, who will? Yeah. If you go by how the pronouncements are coming from the political establishment, we are looking at a situation that they're praying like hell that the storm is going to go away and things will be back to business as usual. But, you know, I'd like to draw your attention to the cover story in The Economist a few weeks ago about India, that can India actually be a global power? And The Economist says that it has the potential, but it has to ask itself the question, does it have the will to do so? And the biggest disconnect in India is between the inability of the political establishment to take tough decisions, to use what we have as our strategic assets. Now, I'd like to bring out two quick points.
The fact is that you're saying that the Ministry of External Affairs has, I'll put it simply, has no guts to take on China.
Not just the Ministry of External Affairs, but I'd even point fingers at the entire South Bloc, the Ministry of Defense. You know, you are having the Defense Minister turn around and say, we'll do everything to protect the integrity of the country. But at the same time, you're not even letting troops make movement. I mean, in military terms, General Mrinal Suman says that let's not be hawkish, but in military terms, you've got 30 Chinese deployed out there. Common sense says that you have at least twice or thrice the number all around them to at least show your force that you can respond. Now, let me give you another point of information, and that is that as late as 2010, we keep talking of Sundrangchu, we keep talking of Nathula, 67 and 86, but 2010, the Indian Corps commander near Arunachal in Tawang, he took decision to hit at about 12 UAVs that came in from China.
Why have we been looking so nervous the whole week, General Ashok Mehta? Why have we been looking so nervous, so absolutely nervous, to the point to which, if this was a psychological game the Chinese are playing with us, then they would think they've already won?
Arnab, it is much more than a psychological game. The psychological game they have played with us for years. Remember that we are a defeated nation in their eyes. They are the victorious power. They are a satiated power. They required Aksai Chin, which they got through stealth.
True.
When I was in China recently...
How recently was that?
2 weeks ago, what the Chinese are telling us is this, that, and this include a few PLA generals, that we ruled the decisions not to stay on in Tawang in 1962. And now they realize that as a result of these fruitless talks, these 30 years, you may have had peace, but there is absolutely no progress on the border talks. And what they told me unequivocally is that there will be no solution to this border talk because of public opinion, weak governments. And then they turned around to me and said, but General, why are you worried? You are the country which is sitting on the territory that you claim, i.e. South Tibet, Arunachal Pradesh. And I turned around and I said, well, you are sitting in Aksai Chin. Having realized that they cannot get any concessions in Arunachal Pradesh, this incident is not an isolated incident.
No, it's not. But Alka Acharya pinned her hopes on this entire talk process, the border talk process, which you say, according to your intermediaries, you've heard in Beijing 2 weeks back, they don't believe is going to go anywhere. It's an eyewash. Alka Acharya, if it is this eyewash, first of all, you accept the view that is emerging from this side, the border talks are an eyewash, and that this was a deliberate act of aggression. I'd like you to respond to General Mehta, please.
Well, thanks Arnav for that welcome with reference to that cold stare, which is clearly you intend to make my pronouncements a test case of my patriotism. But really I do not subscribe to that line of argument that the border talks or the discussions or the dialogues or indeed the entire efforts since 2003 an eyewash or a waste of time. I do believe that there is a dispute at the core which somehow does not seem to lead to its logical conclusion. What does a dispute mean? A dispute means that you are not going to take my version of what I claim, and I'm not going to take your version. Now, if that is the case, then to beat one's breasts and say that how dare they contest our claim.
No, I don't think so. I don't think we are saying that. I'm afraid.
I'm sorry, Mr. Goswami, that is precisely what you are saying.
I don't think.
If I may just be allowed to complete what I'm saying.
I think you got it wrong there.
No, I am saying that what the Chinese have done is a deliberate act. Yes, it is. Do they do this deliberately to test our case? No, I don't think so.
You don't think? They do it accidentally?
I think what they have done deliberately is what they believe, they claim to be their own.
But isn't that a very apologist position for China?
No, what is our response? We contest it. Why? Because we claim...
But they're sitting on our land.
No, so that is what we contest.
They are sitting on our land. We are not sitting on theirs.
Precisely, Arnab. We contest it because we believe that this is our land.
But
so what? So what we have contesting claims.
No, one second. Theoretically, your position is correct. Practically, I'm sure it doesn't hold. Because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you just one fact out of many. According to Indian surveillance, as of October 2011, Dr. Acharya, Indian surveillance reveals such a lot of infrastructure on the Chinese side of the LAC. Huge military infrastructure on the Chinese side of the LAC. And you know, Ms. Acharya, this did not exist till 2008. In other words, in the last 3 years, they've hugely ramped up their infrastructure. Now what are they telling us? You don't build your infrastructure. So this is not a theoretical situation, it's a very well planned aggression. We are getting two responses from this side. Here the other side.
In fact, I'd like to bring out a quick point that, you know, with the Pakistanis who have seceded the Shaksgam Valley to the Chinese, the Chinese are now not letting them set foot there also. So when even on a friendly gesture you secede land to China, you can forget about it. So what they have a history of nibbling away into territory, whether in Aksai Chen or in the South China Sea region.
They have an eye on an Indian airstrip. I like to get Shankar Prasad in, because the fact is they have an eye, Dr. Shankar Prasad, let's look at it in military terms. They have an eye on an airstrip. It's not some, you know, theoretical battle for them. They want an airstrip in Daulat Bay Oldie sector. That's what I've been told. They want to stop our infrastructure. They really ramp up their infrastructure.
And why they want to do it is because they've made about $32 billion worth of investment.
There is just
in
one
the Shaksgam Valley and Baltistan area, and they're not going to let their investment be not suitably protected.
There's just
so this is the start of
let's get everyone in and then go back.
Possibly more encroachment.
Dr. Shankar Prasad, you've heard different points of view. Alka Acharya's point of view, Maruf, KC Singh and General Mehta's. I'd like you to respond principally to the arguments made by Dr. Alka Acharya, because I believe they are contrary to yours, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Arnab, we have to look at the overall perspective as to how things have developed over the last 30 years with China. We must understand that the Chinaman thinks in long-term perspective, and they have been working on development of infrastructure across the border for the last 30 years. It takes many years to build 3,700 kilometers of roadways, to develop trains, to develop logistic bases, air bases and landing grounds. Today they are in a position where they can dictate terms to us. Having said that, let us come to the current situation. The current situation is that they have ingressed into our territory by about 10 to 15 kilometers in the DBO Depsang plain.